This is an analysis of Chapter 2 of Never Let Me Go. Um, in our previous video, we kind of detail the characters that we meet, who is important in our story, Kathy H. as a carer. So in this video, I kind of want to talk about how these characters are portrayed. So again, we have Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy. In Chapter 2, we meet Miss Emily and Miss Lucy. So Miss Lucy is the new young guardian, and you can see her here. I pulled a picture from the movie. Miss Emily is the head guardian, and she doesn't exactly like Miss Lucy. So we're going to assume guardian means some kind of teacher, principal type of role. What's interesting about Chapter 2 is the representations of gender. So interestingly, we have a male author writing as a female main character. He's writing as Kathy. What do you notice that's different in the representations of masculinity and femininity? It's kind of an interesting subject to talk about. You think of the representation of women like Kathy and Ruth, and then you have female guardians like Miss Lucy or Miss Emily, but then you have Tommy. So there's an interesting dynamic going on here. Do you think that the novel's male or female characters come across differently than other characters that we've read about for sci-fi? I just thought that was a good point to make. So moving into Chapter 2, know that this is going to jump back and forth in Kathy's life. So she's 31, she's a carer, and she's in the middle of quitting her job. And then we also have Kathy in her 20s. If you look at page 17, it cuts off at the last paragraph. We were having this conversation on a fine summer evening, sitting out in a little balcony of her recovery room. So she's talking to Ruth when she's in her 20s. And it's kind of interesting because then it jumps back to her time at Hailsham. So one of the things that they discuss at Hailsham are these things called exchanges. So exchanges are interesting. It's a way for these students at Hailsham to create art. So we'll say art exchange, and we even had poetry at one point. So it's kind of interesting. 4 times a year, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, we kind of had a big exhibition, cumulative sale of all the things we've been creating in the 3 months since the last exchange. So that includes paintings, drawings, pottery, all sorts of sculptures, bashed up cans that they pay for exchange tokens. So they receive these tokens in exchange for their artwork. And then you can buy things with these tokens. So the teachers are in charge of this, and they praise students for what they've been doing. Now, that kind of leads me to Tommy's elephant. So we have this situation where Tommy, while he is experiencing Hailsham, he creates this elephant, and he kind of jokes and says, I'm not really good at drawing or whatever. He did this particular watercolor, and it says he done it, he claimed it as a kind of joke. I quizzed him a lot on this point. I suspect the truth was that it was like a lot of things at age. You don't have any clear reason, you just do it. But after he creates his elephant, kids started making fun of him for it. The only teacher or guardian who does not make fun of him, Miss Geraldine. She's everyone's favorite guardian when we were that age. She was gentle, soft-spoken, and always comforted when you needed it. And for Tommy, he had created this interesting looking watercolor, and Miss Geraldine praised him for it instead of criticizing him. So because of this, he no longer participates in these exchanges. I'll move that over so you can see it. Coming back to Ruth. Ruth is kind of stuck in the past, and we kind of see this um, with the conversation she has with Kathy during her recovery. So whatever her recovery is, um, she is essentially stuck with this feeling of I wish I was still at Hailsham. Um, she kind of reminds me of like the Regina George of Hailsham. She has a posse and they will follow her. Um, you'll see she kind of lies about some things. Um, but also you have Tommy. Tommy's the sensitive guy. He's kind of like Aaron from Mean Girls. And um, the way that she treats him is kind of demeaning in a way. Um, the only person who really appreciates and is nice to Tommy is Kathy. And you notice when they're in the hallway and Tommy's apologizing to her, she's kind of uncomfortable because people see her with Tommy. She's like, oh, okay, can we hurry this up? Um, but I just find the dynamic interesting between Kathy and Tommy. Um, Now, a lot of what this novel does, and I'm going to kind of move forward in a new slide here, we see a theme of looking back on the past. And it's very nostalgic. Um, Kathy narrates um, to reconnect with her past. And I think a lot of us do this. We all tell stories about when I was a kid, da da da. Hailsham is very much a elementary school setting or middle school setting. And she kind of misses having that innocence. So we can say innocence of the child. Um, Kathy, I can't spell. Um, so I just want you to keep those in mind. Her focus on her past really only affects what she says in narration, but it can be confusing because she doesn't remember certain things or she's trying to remember if she is remembering things correctly. But her memories move primarily between the past and the present with her time at Hailsham.